All right, we'll go ahead and kick off. So my name is Brian Flax. I am the Marketing and Technology Director here for the Core Group, joined by my colleagues, Dr. Barry McCarran, who is the Managing Director of Core Retrofit, Leanne Fay, who is the Sales Manager of Core Retrofit, and Maggie McGahan, who is the Sales Coordinator for Core Retrofit as well. So today we are talking about new grants, new rules, maximize funding and minimize risk as it relates to the SEI one-stop shop scheme. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. This session will be recorded and we will make the recording available shortly after the webinar today. We'll send around a follow-up survey with a link to that recording. If you aren't able to join us for the full session, we will have the full recording available to view, along with just a very short survey. If you don't mind sharing your thoughts and opinions on the webinar, we're focused on continuous improvement and making these beneficial to everybody that joins. There is a question and answer function through Microsoft Teams, and you'll see that towards the top of your screen. If you click on Q&A, you'll be able to ask your question at any point through the presentation, and then we'll address the Q&As at the very end of today's session. And then if there's any questions at all after the fact, you are free to reach out to any of us here today. We'll be sharing our contact details in the follow-up email that is sent out. So without further ado, I'll hand this over to Barry, who will bring us through the overview and the first bit of the presentation today. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Brian, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to see so many people join, and indeed anybody's picking up the recording. The amount of people that registered, again, a good mix of professionals in the industry and, of course, potential clients looking to find out more. So with that broad spectrum of people we have on board, we'll try and walk you through everything here that we want to get across. So again, just a soft introduction to Core. The Core Retrofit is only one side of the Core group. We have on the other side, for people that aren't familiar, Core Insulation, who manufacture in Ireland a variety of insulation products for the construction industry, and indeed, of course, the retrofit sector as well. And then you have ourselves, one of Ireland's leading one-stop shops, and also Ireland's first ever registered one-stop shop. And again, we are very active in this retrofit space, approximately 600 retrofits last year, and hopefully looking to do more this year. I'm just going to kick off and give a bit of an overview of what we really want. I suppose retrofit hasn't been a buzzword for a wee while now, primarily because of the grants that are out there. And in Ireland, we are the envy of much of Europe with the generous grants that are on offer through the SEI system. But also in Ireland, we're fortunate enough to have alongside it the vacant derelict grants as well. And again, we find a lot of our segments in the marketplace for the one-stop shop are really, that first-time buyer that's maybe bought a home. Very often it's vacant and derelict, and also people sort of coming up to retirement age as well, who are maybe looking then to tackle in a deep dive, in a deep retrofit, an existing home and have it comfortable for the future as well. So the other thing that really prompted us to engage with everyone is really around a lot that has happened in Q1 in 2026, and boy, there has been a lot. First of all, fortunately, we have had the reprofiling of some of the SEI grants, which is very good, and some of those have increased, and Maggie will give us a walkthrough of that in a wee while. But also there has been, I suppose, a splash of retrofit in the press recently, predominantly through March and into April as well. And I'm going to cover some of that as well. And then there's the general value of the one-stop shop, which, again, we feel shouldn't be lost in the current marketplace and with consumer sentiment at the moment as well. So let's dive into that. I suppose the trigger or the initial thing from my perspective that burst onto the scene was the publication of an ESRI report, and then it triggered, particularly in the Irish Times, some of the headlines that we see here as well. Some of them are opinion pieces, some of them are commentary. That's some of the headlines there. We'll see retrofitting, heat your house will freeze your finances. We can see here the ESRI report. We had then a comment around payback, and then general stuff as well in the climate space around, the EV market and retrofitting as well, and how maybe we could have moved earlier within the country, and just to box off some of it as well. Again, a difference of opinion here, potentially about maybe going off-piste and not using the one-stop shops or the SEI grant space. We'll try and cover that as well. Talking almost about deep retrofits being as much as a second mortgage. We'll address these things head on in this webinar as well. The potentials of not meeting climate targets as well, and then 40% of the Irish households have no plans to retrofit. So again, just myself building out some commentary around what we've seen in the press. I'll jump in on that and cover three main points on that. The first one for me is the particular report that came out. Wouldn't be hugely critical with it. In some respects, it aligns to what we have experienced as a company and what we see in the marketplace. But the first key point that I would point out is that the report ran up until December 2024. We're now nearly 18 months on from that to say. And what we're seeing then is we had a record year of retrofit in 2025 after the period in which that report was recorded, or which the data bookended at December 2024. So again, in terms of the national targets and where Ireland's going with retrofit, if you're to include where we are right now, right up into April 2026, Kieran Byrne in the SCI, who's over the retrofit at the National Retrofit Summit recently, he gives some very glass half full commentary on this, and again I would agree with it as well. If you were to look at the growth from 2019 right through to that December 2024, where that ESRI report is there, and if you understand the exponential growth curve, what you're going to see is again just an acceleration towards 2030, and there has, until recent events, I suppose, with the headwind of the energy crisis, which in a twisted way could actually be quite good long term for retrofit. We're seeing a good growth pattern in that. So this curve, as Kieran was outlining, if we see the same 0 to December 2024, if we see that same level of percentage growth from where we are now right through to 2030, we are not going to be that far off the targets. And I think that's a really good point to bring to bear. The other thing that was in the report that again I think is again has alignment with core retrofits and our own internal data, is that retrofits costing somewhere in the region between €23,000 and €66,000. That sort of range for typical deep retrofit. That's correct. That'll be our experience of this space as well. I suppose anecdotally then in this, again, I talked about our market segments that we experience, and what we see, again, going back to the young professionals maybe trying to get on the ladder and getting a vacant derelict home and starting into this deep retrofit, which is a big area for us. We're looking at new build construction now going up to €3,500 a metre squared. Sometimes, depending on where you are, unfortunately, geographically in the country, that could be up at maybe €5,000 a metre squared. And I have retrofit somewhere in the region of, if it's a deep retrofit, but you're not extending and doing a renovation, if you're looking at the retrofit, it's about €1,000 a metre squared, and some cases below that. Of course, now there's a price pressure coming onto that maybe, but still, and based on those figures, that's about a third of the cost of new build, and that's why we're not seeing a real slowdown in the retrofit space, because there is more hunger to do those deep retrofits. The other thing that I would say in response to what was in the ESRI report, and I think it deserves articulation, is really around the concept that investing in a home is really what is happening here, and I think that's the lens that should be looked through, because If you invest, and I'll take into play another ESRI study, which did say that per BER band, or building energy rating band increase, that people go up maybe from a D to a C to a B to an A. For every one of those you go up in terms of the letters, and this was a couple of years old now, so you could quite confidently add on a percentage or two. But back when that report was published, it said that there was a 3% increase in the asset, i.e. the home, per band of BER you go up. So taking an investment of maybe up on €70,000 and ploughing it into a home is really going to appreciate the asset, as well as experiencing good comfort and reduced running costs. And that's never been more underlined than where we sit currently with the huge spike we're all seeing in energy. So I think that's an important point to bring to bear as well. Leanne will touch on this in a wee while, but also, this 23 to 66, that's also the range of some large family cars at the moment. And again, I think that's worth pointing out as well in terms of the overall picture of things, and people don't have the same potential hesitation around that. Just to finish off then, the commentary that I have around the recent stuff that was in the press, and I could have talked for almost an hour in itself on some of these things, is actually some of the stuff that was in the ESRI report around, you retrofit your home and the energy cost is pretty much the same as it was before, and you're not getting this uplift versus predicted performance and actual performance. The heart of that is well understood for a lot of us in the professional community around retrofitting and around BERs. Building energy rating in particular is a very good tool. It's very good for profiling the stock out there in the built environment that's there if you're buying it and you're currently living in it. It does give an indication of what the energy profile is for that building. But the key is, and it is well recognized, it's an indication. There is many of the big house builders in Ireland, have they apply a correction factor of in some cases up to 40% to a building energy rating to get it accurate for them. So that currently exists, and that's currently understood. Again, I won't bore you with the mechanics of it and highlighting the granularity of it, but it is only an asset rating tool. It is not a predictable energy tool in terms of the accurate data that it can pull out. So the correction factor is one of the things that leads to this factor. And then also, if you're living in a retrofitted house and you are in that comfort space, you tend not to then curtail your behavior. Whereas people maybe living in a D or an E rated house, there might be a tendency to just, keep the heating on in one room, turn radiators off upstairs, maybe do things like that. So the figures that are in the report and the data is there can be somewhat confusing, but the heart of the commentary that's in the report lies in that as well. So that area that I'm talking about is referred to as the rebound effect. So that's really the three things that I wanted to pull out that was in the media cycle and that was in the ESRI report. Again, I'd very, very much welcome engagement on this in the Q&A. Again, here within the team, myself, Leanne and Maggie, we've really, pitched it up today that we'll be quite to the point. So that maybe we've quite a good session in terms of Q&A towards the end. So please get your questions ready while the rest of the presentation's going on, and don't hesitate. Brian will take them and read them out, and hopefully we'll get that out of it. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Leanne, who's going to cover really the value of the one-stop shops. And I think it's really, really important in the retrofit space to understand this as well, along with all the other things that are happening. So over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Barry. Good afternoon, everyone. So Barry has outlined, I suppose, the wider conversation happening right now around retrofit and the somewhat, I suppose, scrutiny and concerns over it. But what that tells us is this, that doing retrofit well has never been more important, and doing it properly, I suppose, has never been more crucial. So we believe that retrofitting, yes, it does. It absolutely works, but it works when it's done right. And when it's rushed or when it's fragmented or it's poorly managed, that's when, we see that, problems can arise from that. So, and when most homeowners, when they look at retrofit, it's the hardest part. It's not about choosing insulation or choosing the heat pump. It's managing the entire process, and that's between the grants, the finance, choosing the assessor, choosing the contractor, the paperwork, and managing that all in one go. So that complexity in itself, that's exactly what Core Retrofit's one-stop shop model was built to remove, essentially. And a one-stop shop, I suppose, what it really means is it's not just about convenience. It's about accountability and trust. And at Core, it means that there's one team responsible for the outcome from start to finish, and the homeowner shouldn't have to have, to coordinate the process or have concerns about who's responsible when questions arise. It's one team and it's one point of contact. So when we talk about the value of a one-stop shop, it's not a catchy slogan. It's a set of principles, and those principles underpin how we do retrofit the right way. So to start off, I suppose the first set of principles, it's the foundation, and with everything, everything starts with getting the design right first. So our home energy assessment, it goes a little bit deeper, and we call our home energy assessment it's a bespoke retrofit design plan, essentially, because we believe homes, they're not a collection of upgrades. Okay, they're a system, and changing one part of a home without looking at the rest, it's nearly like it's like upgrading the engine of a car and not looking at the brakes or not looking at the steering. You're upgrading one part, but you actually could do damage to another as well. So it's looking at the whole system and having everything performing together, and that prevents, I suppose, costly mistakes later on in the project. And then when you have the design right, the delivery, that becomes critical then. So only the right people on site. We only work with the best contractors in the country. No guesswork, no shortcuts, no cowboys. We have a thorough onboarding process. We work with registered professionals in this industry, and quality it's controlled all the way through. So we don't treat it like an exam at the end and we hope that we're going to pass it. Quality is controlled and monitored right through the project. From the very first pre-start meeting, we're looking at the design, we're looking at the project plan. Is it going to work? Right through to the mid-works, then through to a final quality inspection as well. So we inspect the work at every stage of the retrofit. And then the final one of the foundation is the quality. It's non-negotiable. Okay, so SEAI will only release the grant to Core Retrofit if the work meets specification. So quality, it's not optional for us. It's guaranteed. And then we have the one-stop shop. So the hardest part for a homeowner, it can be, and one of the biggest frustrations can be the paperwork. So we remove that administration burden from the grant application through to all the technical compliance and the reports that's required. There can be up to 50 reports required for a typical project, and reading through those and recognizing that every report meets the specification that's required. We handle all of that. And then I suppose one team, one process. That, to echo what I said earlier, it's all about accountability. It's one team, it's one process, and it's one point of contact, which makes it easier for the homeowner. And again, it's all down to one team and trust. And the final then is cost certainty from day one. So we remove the financial uncertainty by removing the grant up front. So as a one-stop shop, we remove that initial grant from the initial invoice. So it is a comfort for a homeowner to know that if the work is not done to specification, SEI will not release that grant to us. And it's also it helps with cash flow. You know, on average grant of 25 to 30,000 euro through the one-stop shop grant, that's taken off the bill from the start. So it does really help a homeowner with cash flow, and then making it achievable. So by deducting the grant up front, and then also access to the SBCI loan, that low cost loan, it really does make retrofit achievable for homeowners. So I suppose in a market where retrofit is under a bit of scrutiny, the real value of the one-stop shop is it's trust, and it's one team, it's one process, and clear accountability from day one. So at Core Retrofit, that's how we protect homeowners, and that's how we believe retrofit should be done. I'll hand you over now to Maggie. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. I'm going to discuss here now the new grants that's available. So some of you might be aware that there's been enhancements in some of the grants, and then different opportunities then for the likes of first-time buyers, and then the individual windows and doors grant. So I'm going to start off with the heat pump grant. With the heat pump grant, there is an increase of €2,000. So there were originally, when the heat pump, you could get 10,500 for an individual house. Now that has increased to 12,500. So it also means for apartments, you can get 9,500 for an apartment, and then if you install an air-to-air heat pump, you can get 7,500. The same criteria applies. You still need to have a technical assessment, and how it is broken down, I suppose that 12,500, just to kind of go back on that, is you get 6,500 for the heat pump itself. So that's air to water or a ground source heat pump, and then there is 2,000 for the central heating system. So that's like new radiators, pipe work, etc. And then there's the bonus of 4,000. That bonus used to be 2,000, now it's 4,000. So that makes up the 12,500. There's a couple of different rules now with the heat pump in terms of changes there. So now if you're installing a heat pump, you don't have to meet that B3 requirement in terms of before you get the grant. So that has been scrapped, along with the 100 kilowatts requirement as well, post works. So that kind of opens up the field there for homeowners that potentially have maybe a C-rated home and put on maybe solar and ended up over a B3. So those homeowners now can avail of grants in general, but also if they put in the heat pump, then they don't need to meet that requirement. So that's definitely a positive for everyone, and it opens it up, hopefully, that people will take on putting in heat pumps. The other thing is, if you already have a heat pump in and you haven't been granted it before, you can now avail. So if you're upgrading your heat pump, you can now avail of the heat pump grant as well. Now you'll only get 10,500 because you won't get that 2,000 for the central heating system. So for the new radiators or pipe work, etc. But there's still 10,500 there for anyone that has an older heat pump that wants to upgrade. In terms of the attic installations, there has been changes for the attic installation as well. So there has been increases there from February. The first increase there is for the detached house. So there's an increase of €500. So it was 1,500. Now it has gone to 2,000. There for semi-detached, there's been an increase, and semi-detached and mid-terrace, there's been an increase of 200. So it means for a semi-detached house or an end of terrace house, you get 1,500 in a grant, and then a terraced house, you will get 1,400. Then with the apartments, you get 300 extra. So that has brought that attic grant up to 1,100 for houses that have been built and occupied prior to 2011. So none of those requirements have changed. So the house has to be built and occupied before 2011, and obviously you can't have been granted it before. In terms of the first-time buyers, this is a big one for the first-time buyers. So anyone that has bought a second-hand property can avail of extra grant there for the attic installation. So like that, comparing a detached to a regular homeowner to the new first-time buyers, they can get an extra 500. So they get from 2,000 up to 2,500, excuse me. So that goes down the board as well. With the semi-detached, they also get 1,900 instead of 1,500. Terraced, they get 1,800 instead of 1,400. And same with the apartment, there's 300 more extra there. You get 1,400 rather than 1,100 if you're a first-time buyer. For the first-time buyers, there's a requirement to show proof that it is your first time. So you will need a document from your solicitor stating that you haven't bought a property previous to this and that it is your first time. So we will require that if you are a first-time buyer going through ourselves. Then in terms of, there is the attic insulation, the cavity insulation. There's been an increase on those as well. So probably not as big, but still substantial. So in terms of the cavity, for a detached house, it has gone up to 1,800. So there's an increase there of €100. The detached property as well has gone up €100, so that's gone to €1,300. Mid-terrace has gone up €50, so that leaves it now at 850 if you have a terraced house. And then apartments have gone up €100, so that's apartments where you get €700 for that. In terms of the second wall grant, I suppose that's a big one for anyone that has previously claimed a cavity wall insulation grant or maybe an internal wall grant. Prior to this, you weren't able to apply for a second wall grant, where a lot of people would do their cavity and would then like to do an additional, we say, internal or external wall insulation. So that has changed now that you can avail. So if you have cavity, you can apply for internal or external wall insulation. If you have applied for internal wall insulation, you can now apply for external wall insulation. If you have applied for external wall insulation in the past, you can't apply for a second grant. Okay, so that's important to note on that. But a big change there that is welcomed. Then on the windows and doors, so this is new in terms of it's a standalone grant for windows and doors. The only thing with that, so windows and doors is the same as what you get in the one-stop shop. We'll say for a detached property, you get 4,000 for the windows and 1,600 for up to 2 doors. So that's 800 per door. With that though, there's a requirement that the walls and attic must meet a standard. Okay, so that means that your walls and attic have to be at an required standard that they've either been done recently or would be done at the stage of installation. So whether you're doing all together, but in order to get that windows and doors grant, your attic has to be a minimum of 300 or 400 mil of attic insulation. And then your walls, all external walls, has to be insulated. So there can't be partial insulation. And then in terms of stone or solid brick houses, they have to have either internal or external wall insulation. So there's a little bit there to note. You can't just go out and get a windows and doors grant and I suppose neglect the other fabrics of the house. You have to have a look. So like that, you need to be your or a building professional to obviously approve that the walls in the attic is up to standard before you would go with your windows and doors. Or you can obviously do it at the time, so you could do your cavity or attic. Then in terms of, I suppose, just to go back over the new grant rules, which I mentioned there with the heat pump. So there is the removal of the 100 kilowatts requirement. So that does open the door for a lot of homeowners there that, potentially don't need to have that whole 100 kilowatt where, as I said, they might have had solar before and they want to put in a heat pump or maybe do the attic, etc. So that's a big change. And then the removal of the B3, like that again, people that might have put in solar but haven't actually looked at the fabric of their house. But I suppose it's all backed by putting in a heat pump. So that's the big thing to take from that. You have to put in your heat pump in order for those grant rules to relax. Okay, so if you're still putting in a boiler, then you're still going to have to meet that 100 kilowatt. Okay, so we're flying through here. So with the vacant above the shop grants, we're just going to touch on this lightly. I suppose we wanted to introduce all the new grants, the new rules, and this is, I suppose, another grant that's coming now that has just recently been announced with the county councils, is the vacant above the shop. The vacant above the shop is available obviously to commercial owners, sole traders, to renovate the residential above the shop. There's up to 140 to obviously receive from the county council, and then you can get SEI grants on top of that. Now, we will be doing a webinar towards the end of the month. I think the 20, let me just check that I don't give you the wrong date, the 28th of April. So we're going to do a webinar on that and deep dive into the process and who qualifies, who doesn't, etc. But we will send out a meeting request for that webinar. So that's the 28th of April. I think that's all from me. I suppose we're going to open the floor for some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. I'll just hold court for a wee second here, and then I'll let Brian come in. I suppose the key things there we've got from Maggie is the reprofiling of those grants. They're going up, and it's very, very exciting in terms of the measures that you can get there, with having to spend less of your own money with respect to those. But just go back through Leanne's stuff as well. Some of the stuff that I know would be rummaging around in people's heads is, and it's often been said, one-stop shops, the price is there, the grant goes to them, this sort of thing that's always discussed in discourse, down the pub, at dinner tables, all the rest of it. To address that primarily, one of the key points that we would like to highlight, with our model in Core Retrofit is really, we embrace your own contractor. So it's very often that for some projects and around the grant space, people don't want to engage because they think that it's Core that's going to do the work or whatever else. Just to be clear, we don't force our products, we don't force our contractor. You can come with your contractor. Therefore, that accusation of like price gouging and stuff, and then it is very much really not true with our model, because that's something that you have at your disposal in terms of the client base, and also for the architects that are on the call and the industry professionals. I think that's a very big point to take away. The other one that Leanne outlined, I think is very important as well, is the net of grant, which means that the cash flow and the bridge there. It's really worth highlighting that as well. And then to the same point, you get the home energy upgrade loan up to €75,000 at 3%, which is brilliant at the moment with inflation going up. And that's available from all of the pillar banks. So whoever you bank with in Ireland, most likely is one of the three, you can get that from them potentially as well. And just to finish out, it's really to just show, and Leanne brought it into my head when she was saying about quality and everything, and that is where we are at with it. We're very much grounded in building physics here, and that methodology of high performance retrofit. But across the water in the UK, unfortunately, we've seen what bad retrofit can look like as well, and it's to that end that we really, are talking to you today as well around all of that as well, and try and debunk some myths that are out there. But that's all from me. I'll hand over to Brian, and he's going to walk us through the questions.
That's great. Thanks, Barry, Leanne, and Maggie for taking us through that presentation. So we've had quite a few questions come in. So we'll start at the beginning here. One from Noel, for maybe you, Leanne, to answer this. How many of your retrofit projects are checked by SCAI to ensure the work is verified and done correctly?
So there's a certain percentage that's pulled at the very end, Noel. So not all houses are inspected, no, but they are 100% are inspected by us. And then generally around, it depends, it's really between 20 to 50% are generally inspected then at the end by SCAI.
Thanks, Leanne. From Zeno then, and this could be for you, Barry, do heat pumps work with radiators as well? No underfloor heating? And then a follow-up to that, how do you deal with deep retrofit and small extensions needing planning at the same time from a management point of view?
Yeah, so thanks, Zeno, for the question. The first thing to say, the heat pumps can work with the radiators in terms of emitters, and also as everybody knows, underfloor heating is usually the arrangement, but either or are totally possible. Again, in our process, we would evaluate that as well in the home energy assessment that's sort of done, and the design, the bespoke arrangement in which we undertake at the project start. And then the second question was, about the extension. So you have up to 40 meters squared to the rear of a property that you're allowed to add on as an extension, exempt from planning. If you're 41 meters squared, therefore that is a consideration for planning. But very often for us, as I was sort of saying about our own segmentation of the market, we very much do. We have about a 50-50% split between people that are retrofitting an existing property with an extension, and the other 50% is typically like a deep retrofit of an existing footprint of a house and everything that goes on within it. So 50% of our business is these. Some of that 50% would have things that are exempt of planning with that rear extension, and some are much more substantial, and that they would typically be coming to us with planning approval. But it is very common that we would capture that project ahead of that even getting planning permission as well, like in an engagement process. So yeah, we've seen it all. Yeah.
Thanks, Barry. So we have another here from Hugh. So for you, Maggie, what is the maximum grant you can get for a deep retrofit? That's probably a question we're asked quite a bit. And then just going on from that, can you get an SEAI grant and a refurbishment grant combined together?
So depending on the property type, so we'll just give an example for detached property, your total grant, SEI grant, is €39,250. So that's for a detached property. In terms of a refurbished grant, I'm guessing like a county council grant, like that, you can avail of, it depends on the property, but you can avail of, if it's over the shop, you can avail of that refurbishment grant through the county council, but through SEI, no, there's no refurbishment grant.
I'll just come in on that as well, just to add another layer to it. And sometimes we don't spell this out often enough in terms of the industry with this. So if you're getting that vacant and derelict, so it's 50,000 for vacant, 20,000 for derelict, and then as Maggie's just outlined, the 39,250. So if you're the person that's in the right place, the right situation at the right time, and you've just got a vacant derelict home, you are qualifying for almost €110,000 in supports between the SEI grants and the council grants. And as Maggie said there correctly as well, also in addition to that, that's now opening up to the typography in villages and towns where the over the shop is there as well. So to my point at the very, very start, and a counter to some of the negative press that there was about retrofitting, I view it as very glass half full and very positive, and a real opportunity, a once in a lifetime opportunity to some end as well.
Thank you. Okay, another one for you, Leanne, then. Are there any exclusions for any of these grants regarding very old housing? And then it mentions pre-1940.
No, so thankfully not anymore. So these pre-1940 homes are often considered traditional homes, and there is a new, not necessarily new, but there's a traditional homes pilot running at the moment, which we're heavily involved in. So if your home is pre-1940, typically solid walls, typically stone or brick, you can avail of the traditional homes pilot grant. The difference between the traditional homes pilot and say maybe going the normal one-stop shop route is we engage with a traditional building professional as well, and that's to ensure that the correct materials and the correct solutions are being provided on the project itself. So between ourselves and the traditional building professional, we work closely and providing the right solution, and the same grants can be drawn down similar to the one-stop shop grants as well.
Thanks, Leanne. Maggie, this one for you, I think this was part of your presentation. So Noel has asked, regarding first-time buyers grants for attic insulation, what is the time frame to receive the additional funds, for example, after what date you've moved in?
Yeah, so the requirements there is anyone that has bought a house from the 1st of January 2025, you can avail of that first time buyers. As I said in the presentation, you do need a letter from your solicitor to state that that is your first property. But the ones you can apply for the grant, or obviously if you're doing a one-stop shop, we apply it for you. But obviously that grant has to be applied before works have been complete. So once you've bought your property once you've bought your property before the 1st of January 2025, you can then apply for the grant. And then as long as it's applied for before the works have been complete.
Thanks, Maggie. We have a two-part question from Jared here for you, Barry. So first question, what are the attic and wall U values required for the windows and door grant? And then going on, is there an advantage to installing windows and doors at the same time as doing the wall energy upgrade? Cavity access, what is CORE's recommended practice for air tightness in this scenario, assuming EPS speed?
Yeah. Okay, there's quite a bit in it. My go-to, and I can't quote the assessment, I'm going to have to ask Leanne or Maggie to come in and just help me with this one. But the go-to always is with the attic and the U values and also the wall U values, albeit whatever methodology you're using, you typically want to get, obviously compliance with the building regulations, but the rule of thumb that we adopt very much from a building physics point of view, high performance construction, alignment with the passive house principles would be 0.15 or below is typically what I would like to see in our bespoke HEAs and stuff coming back to us. And then we'll just let Leanne come in on that as well, just around the rules.
Yeah, so U values, what you'd be looking to achieve there in the attic is 0.16. So the backstop U value is 0.16, and then in the walls, if it's a solid wall, it's 0.27, and then in a cavity wall, it's 0.35.
Yeah. So thank you, Leanne. That's perfect. So that dovetails lovely with where my point was. So you can see there the way in which I answered that question from the top. Our own understanding and our own ambition level is to try and reach the 0.15 figures where we can. But again, not to be misconstrued with what also Leanne talked about in the traditional space. If it's a traditional pre-1940s, there's a different set of approach in this as well. But to build on the second part of that question, where we were asked about the windows and doors and the installation of those, very often for me, particularly with external wall installation, the windows and doors are a serious consideration at that junction in the retrofit. And to Leanne's point in her presentation earlier, everything in retrofit and all these measures are interconnected. It's very important to understand that. That's one of the big selling points of the one-stop shop, is that you have people that understand the interconnectivity between all these different measures. So the junction that works really, really well is when you're doing the wall measures, that you would also embrace doing the windows and doors at the very same time. If that's with external wall insulation, it affords you a unique opportunity to actually do very clever detailing around the window installation, whereby the window, when it's installed, can oftentimes be made a warm frame or a warm door, because it'll actually be installed within the insulation layer. And that's a very, very good detail, and one that's practiced as best practice across Europe. So that hopefully answers that as well. With cavity fill insulation, that's also a recommendation as well. Windows and doors going hand in hand, but the cavity can also work very well as well, because you get to do a new install there. And then very good question in some respects when bringing into play air tightness here as well. So again, following along, best principles, the 5 key principles that we would adopt is that, you're doing your floors, walls and roof to a good U value, you're dealing with thermal bridging, you're doing your triple glazed windows, and then you're doing your air tightness, and no problem doing that because you're going to mechanically ventilate. So all 5 of those equal a good outcome. But to specifically get into air tightness, of course, would go hand in hand with the installation of the windows and doors, because that's a significant area where you would have air leakage. So by putting in new windows and doors, you get the chance then, as part of that install, to combat that. And then with the with the wall, the cavity wall fill that was spoken about as well, again, there's specific, NSCI recommendations in terms of the installation and the pattern of drilling for those as well. But very often for us, the situation is a deep retrofit in these, so it might even be back to the bare block. So a lot of that can be put right. Sometimes we have situations where you full fill cavity and then external wall insulation as well, which gives you an excellent performance. Certainly 1.15 or even better there as well. So again, that's very much along our strategy, that question. So in a nutshell, we'd be recommending typically those three would go together typically, and then that's a lot of heavy lifting of a particular house as well. When implementing those three, you've only got the mechanical ventilation really left, in terms of those 5 principles. Yeah, sorry, Brian, quite a long one there, but it needed to be.
Perfect, thanks, Barry. Maggie, another one for you from Noel. Can you please explain again regarding getting insulation grants if you have received it previously?
Yeah, no problem. So Noel, you can only get an extra wall grant, so not attic or anything else. So it's just the wall. So if you've previously applied for a cavity wall insulation grant, you can now apply for either internal wall or external wall insulation. If prior to this you have applied for, we'll say, internal wall and you want to do external wall insulation, you can apply for the external wall. The only thing is, if you have, we'll say, external wall insulation, you actually can't apply for any further grants. So it only applies if you've done cavity or internal wall insulation prior.
Thanks, Maggie. Question from Catherine here. I'm not sure who wants to take this one. So how does it work in a detached dorm or bungalow where there are rooms upstairs and then some attic area either side of the rooms?
I can take it if no one else does.
Sure.
Yeah, so typically if it's a deep retrofit, you want to be insulating along the line of the internal space. So typically the best practice there would be to, if I almost have to close my own eyes to picture it, but where you're coming up the wall and it is the dormer situation, you have to insulate along the flat surface before coming to what is called the knee walls, which is the upstand walls that are usually quite low, and then you're insulating up then across the rafter space, and then across the top hat as well, and then down the other side. That'd typically be best practice in those situations and scenarios that come up. But again, very often it's a deep retrofit. There's a lot of the house stripped back, and these measures are getting tackled, in that fashion. But so hopefully that goes some way to answering that. Again, anybody else who wants to contribute on top of that, feel free.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Barry. Just to mention, there's a lot of questions here, so we'll try and get through as many as we possibly can, just knowing we've got about 10 minutes left for the webinar today. One from Gareth. Hi all, thanks for the helpful presentation. Have you any plans to expand into the north? Stormont have now confirmed heat pump low carbon retrofit funding to start March 2027, and without an equivalent of SEAI up here, we are trying to get ahead of the rollout as assessors, air testers, etc.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can answer that, seeing as I've opened my mouth first. The first thing I'd like to point out is that we are already active core retrofit in Northern Ireland. We're on the NICEP scheme in Northern Ireland, which is the Northern Ireland Sustainable Energy Programme. We're on it for the year ahead as well. Very proud to be there as well. And again, I wasn't just aware of a new announcement there, so that's just great to hear as well. I knew that there was stuff coming down the pipe in terms of that, so that this is it coming out now as well. So again, core will very much continue to be present in that marketplace. So again, just when we capture what's coming there in March 2027, we might align to it. I understand the commentary about there not being a one-stop shop currently in Northern Ireland or to that arrangement, but it is something that we have as part of our strategy, is to maybe look at this space as well. I don't think that we will have a replication of the level of grant aid, unfortunately, that is available here in the Republic of Ireland. But nonetheless, it's still in essence much of the same commentary here about viewing retrofit as a glass half full. If we're getting support to combat and to do and execute these measures, it's very, very worthwhile. And we can see, again, if people are capturing these projects at the right stage of life, the investment into the fabric, the investment into, the transition, when done right across to new ventilation systems and heating systems, will lead to much lower running costs. And I think, for everybody now, that's really becoming very, very clear just how exposed you can be if you're not on a decarbonised solution.
Thanks, Barry. Another question here from Jared. This is a technical question, so I'll open it to the floor as well. Whoever wants to answer this one. Are there any conditions in which CORE would permit or recommend the use of closed cell or indeed open cell expanding foam within a masonry cavity? 2 times 100 mil blocks, 100 mil cavity, likely contains XPS in cavity, painted plaster finish, no insulated plasterboard, or ventilation internal.
Typically, I don't mind talking about this. It's a question that crops itself up every now and again. Not a huge fan of spray foam installations. They are allowed under the SCI schemes. So again, a lot of these things, it's very important to point out as well. Core Retrofit will do your home energy assessment, as Leanne said in her presentation. It's a bespoke one. It's personalized. It's to the particular property, and in that there is recommendations for the various products and to achieve the relevant U values. But it is important as well. It's not a dictatorship. These are people's homes, and they are client led. Ultimately, at the end of the day, so as long as it's permitted within the rules, it's something the Core Retrofit won't, I suppose, eliminate. But in terms of our internal policy on this, we try to advocate for the right solutions in the right place and the best products in the right place, and to that end, very often spray foam isn't one of the products that we line up, but it has its places too in terms of that as well. So if that's not too much of a diplomatic answer, that's it as well. Yeah. So
thanks, Barry. One for you, Maggie, from Olga. So 2-part question here. So 1, can you apply for 1 grant only, example, attic insulation only or windows only, provided walls and attic is up to the requirements? And 2, can you explain the removal of the B3 requirement? Do you mean that the pre-BER rating can be better than a B3?
Yeah, so Olga, you can apply for an attic grant or a windows and doors grant, yes, given that the walls and the attic are up to standard. You can do that through the individual grants, not through the one-stop shop. With the removal of the B3, that's exactly what I mean, yes. So prior to this, you had to have a B3 or below. Now you could have a B2 and you can apply for the grants. But in that case, you have to be putting in a heat pump. Okay, so just bear that in mind. The requirements, if you're above B2, we'll say you have to put in a heat pump in order to qualify for those grants.
Thanks, Maggie. So we have a question about the defective concrete block scheme here as it relates to soundproofing. So Barry, I'll throw this one to you. A defective concrete block rebuilt where 2 semis getting built same time. Would the one-stop shop have any advice on soundproofing between houses, and could, say, insulation grants be used for the likes of this?
Yeah, no problem, Brian. I'll take a wee run at that with the first part of it, and then I'll throw it over to Leanne here as well. And there is an important message in all of this as well. So DCB homes can actually work with the one-stop shops and get additional grant support as well. That's the first big thing to say whenever we touch on this topic. The next thing to the soundproofing, you're going to have a party wall arrangement between the two. So there's a variety of solutions available there in that. One of the first things that I would point out, and one of the best strategies for particularly 1 degree of sound, is air tightness. if you have a good air tightness layer with respect to both properties in that arrangement, you do eliminate a good bit of noise that way, because a lot of noise that people experience is airborne sound, and the key being, if it's airborne and air is not getting in through these gaps in the wall, you do actually surprisingly eliminate a lot of noise transfer. The other impact is, or the other one is impact noise as well. So again, depending on the arrangements there, there's other strategies there in it. But I think that the permutation that was pitched up there was masonry construction, so that's solid construction with a good thermal mass. So impact sound for me should be well curtailed in that arrangement, and air tightness is probably the best measure there as well. But again, don't be afraid to engage with us. I am aware of the holding slide that's up on the screen. We are not hard sell. Come engage with us. And if it's information only you get from our team, who are brilliant, and as you can hear with Leanne and Maggie, it's some depth of information there. And this space is very, very confusing the whole time with the different permutations that exist, not only in the whole housing stock, but also within the grant landscape. And we deal with this on an hourly basis almost. Leanne, just on the DCB, I might get you to just give a wee overview just on that as well for that particular question as well, and the homeowners maybe asked about it.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I suppose maybe just to add on that, the defective concrete block scheme, and generally when you have two same of these being built at the same time, it's generally the same builder, and there's a bit of confusion out there. I think that people believe if they have chosen a contractor already or a builder, that they can't engage with a one-stop shop. So our model is a little bit different, exactly how Barry described it earlier. We work with your builder, with your contractor, and they will act as the main contractor on site. So we're not bringing in one contractor on top of another, and that's where it can get very, very messy for a homeowner. And we don't want to be causing any more hassle in these situations. So our model works quite well there. If you have a builder already and you have been approved for the DCB scheme, just come talk to us. We will work directly with your builder on that.
Thank you, Leanne. While you're following up on that question, we have another one about the traditional homes pilot scheme, so I'll throw this over to you. So follow up for the older properties mentioned, are they limited to the traditional homes pilot scheme, or can that be ignored and the modern grants be used instead? In my case, quite a bit of work has already been done.
Okay, no. So the only route, grant route for a pre-1940s traditional home is the pilot scheme at the moment. So it can't go through any other route. And the reason, there is a good reason for that. It needs to be controlled. There needs to be professionals looking at this because of the age of the property. And as I said earlier, just making sure that the correct solution is being applied to these properties. So unfortunately, no, the modern grants, the modern grant route or modern installation types will not apply there.
Thanks, Leanne. And just to close us out, I think we're just about up on time. So this one is for Maggie. Hi, Maggie. Was it post or pre 1st January 2025 regarding the first-time buyers grant for attic insulation?
Yeah, so it is post 1st of January. So once you've bought your house, after the 1st of January 2025, you then qualify for the first time buyer's grant there for the attic.
Perfect. Thanks very much. I think that brings us to the end of our webinar today. So just to recap, there is going to be another webinar on the vacant above the shop scheme. That is the 28th of April. If we have your details, we'll send on a bit of information about registration and the time of the event. If you have any further questions, the contact information is up on the screen there, info@coreretrofit.com, and our phone number as well. We'll also be sending around an email with a recording of this webinar and a short survey. So please, if you have a moment, take time to fill that out and send it back to us. And again, if you have any further questions, our contact details will be on that email as well. Feel free to reach out. So thank you to Leanne, Barry, and Maggie for the webinar today. Thank you to everybody who took the time to attend, and we hope to see you on the 28th.